Hello and welcome back to the Insight on No Ratings. It's been a while because Pythag's been ill. I've been busy, but I think we've come together at exactly the right time for Pythag, not for me. I'm a Liverpool fan. This is not the right time. But Liverpool have just lost to PSG. We're not going to dwell too much. Let's get right into this. We're going to sort of discuss both legs, but let's start with the first one. Where do you think this was decided?
I think first leg obviously was a pure domination by PSG. I think the biggest issue you guys had was that Salah was just completely subdued by Mendes. So there was absolutely no thrust coming from that side whatsoever. Every time he tried to collect the ball and even go on a run, Mendes just pocketed him. So then I think that psychologically affected Liverpool because like our main man's just been completely taken out of the game, and then you had no one really else in the team who was going to stand up tall to carry that burden. And then PSG was just so technical in terms of the midfield, kept the ball really well. Hakimi had a good game in the first leg and was really bombing on, and then that was helping PSG just dominate territory. Really awful second leg performance by Hakimi, but we'll touch upon that later. And obviously, Kvaratskhelia, Dembele were absolutely just running riot. So anytime they got the ball, they would just get you guys onto the back foot, get you guys onto the back foot. And then you just had, as a team, you just couldn't get out. You just got sunk deeper and deeper into your own defense. And yeah, if it wasn't for Allison, you probably would have been 3-4 nil down based on the first leg.
I think also coming to the second leg, the midfield point. Let's start there. I think because I think that's a really important point. João Neves, Vitinha, and whoever else you put in there. Zay Emery came on in the second leg, but whoever else you put there, you've got two really technical players. And I don't know if this is a really nuanced point, but I feel like all three midfielders are so right-footed, and we've all played the game. You know, when you receive the ball, you have certain angles as a right footer that you want to play towards, which is why Salah gets so much attention, which is why it sort of works a lot of the time. But in this game, João Neves can go both ways, Vitinha can go both ways constantly. So what happened, especially in the second leg, especially in the first half, PSG were playing out really easily because the moment it went to Vitinha, he can turn left or right and they're gone. Whereas for Liverpool, the playing out the back was a bit clunky. Liverpool almost went, I don't know if you agree, but they went like almost back to the Klopp style of play where they were just trying to win the ball back to play rather than slot style of play where they were like dominating the ball to win games.
I think part of that is also psychologically they felt inferior to PSG, and the
Mm.
pressure placed upon them, especially someone like Gravenberch. I think we touched upon it. He's looked leggy in these two legs combined. And if someone like Gravenberch, who's your number six, isn't really super comfortable in the press, and he's almost like dribbling into areas and then just passing it back and not really fully taking the responsibility to push you guys forward and drive you forward, break through lines with the press, then it just invites more and more pressure. And then Liverpool were almost having to think with each pass. Everything had to be very laboured and well thought out, which kind of worked in the second leg because obviously you're at home, so you've got a bit more time on your hands. But in the first leg, you just haven't got that time. You've got to be playing like clockwork, and your midfield doesn't really move the ball with as much fluidity as the PSG midfield. And I think in terms of technicians, I think obviously Gravenberch, McAllister are two decent technicians, but I think Vitinha and João Neves just have that extra bit of looseness with the ball. They're
Mm.
very fluid. And you mentioned like the lack of a left foot, but sometimes also having a Trivela pass with the outside of the foot really helps. If you look at players like Vitinha, João Neves, they're so like as soon as they've dropped a shoulder, and even if they're facing towards their left, they'll just stroke that ball with the outside of the foot. And I feel like that pass, Gravenberch and McAllister, they do have that pass in them, but it's not as natural to them as it is to Vitinha. And I think that allows those two players from the PSG team just to go in either direction and find a pass easier than the Liverpool midfield.
Yeah, I think the term the kids would probably use for Liverpool's midfielders, and I genuinely think they're both absolutely top midfielders, but in comparison to Vitinha and João Neves, they're stiff. And I was a stiff midfielder, so I know what that feels like when you get someone behind you. It happened a lot in the second leg to McAllister, where like he was picking the ball up and suddenly he'd have two players on him, and he just couldn't really navigate out of the space. And then obviously this front line of PSG's, I thought in the first half or a certain period in the first half, Dembele dropping off meant that Kvaratskhelia had Trent 1v1. I think, honestly, I thought Trent was fine, actually. And Robertson was 1v1 against whoever was drifting out to the right hand side. And that like tactical switch from Luis Enrique, I think probably tipped the tie overall in PSG's favour?
I think Dembele, honestly, I thought he had a great couple of legs. I mean, his finishing was still as woeful as ever. But just in terms of the nuisance factor, I don't think I've ever seen Konate sweat as much over two legs. Like, and the weird thing was, it was almost like long balls being played sometimes by Donnarumma. Like Donnarumma is a weak link in possession, so sometimes you would see, especially in the second leg, where Liverpool have put a good press on, and then Donnarumma is having to just hit it long because he's just not very comfortable in possession. But Dembele, due to his energy factor and the new dynamism and the motivation he's got under Enrique, he would drop in from the goal kick and almost like leap at the same time as Kanate. And because he's just so athletic, sometimes he's even able to get a flick on off the ball, and then that would rock Kanate because he's like, where the hell did he just come from?
Mm.
And it's really strange because you don't really see Dembele as like your orthodox number nine who's going to be really engaged in a physical battle and do well against a powerhouse like a Kanate. But I thought Dembele did really well in these little duels. And then what would happen is that, let's just say Kanate still won the header, but because he's won it under a bit of stress, that ball, that next 50-50 that's come has fallen to a PSG player. And then you saw even in this game where when that ball does fall to a PSG player, then they're suddenly counter-attacking and running straight at the Liverpool backline. And there was nervy moments even in this second leg as well.
I think the front lines, sorry, the forward lines decided the ties. Really, obviously, there was only 2 goals in it, but I always felt when PSG went forward, they were a bit sharper, a bit crisper. They were creating like when they were creating a half a chance, it could have easily gone in if Gravenberg's toe wasn't in the way. Say when Cavara had that shot. Whereas for Liverpool, I felt Liverpool were clunky, and I've said that a lot this season. That if Salah isn't like on song, or he doesn't come up with a moment. And to be fair to Nuno Mendes, he cleared one practically off the line in the second leg, and that could have been 1-0. But if Salah isn't on song, and he wasn't over these 2 legs, actually, I thought he started to get a little bit desperate, I think. And I was crying at the end of the game because I think he's just kissed goodbye to his Ballon d'Or chances, and he must have known that. But because PSG managed to isolate and stop him, it felt like the other two or three or whatever combination just couldn't get it going. Luis Diaz, obviously, I know you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think from a Liverpool perspective, it shows the slightly limited ceiling that your front line has. People talk about this Liverpool team being as good as the Klopp version, but for me, no chance. Purely because then you had another superstar in Sadio Mane, so you had two out and out superstars in their prime, and then you had Firmino, who wasn't really a match winner, but he was still a world class false nine. But it was the Mane and Salah factor that was the big factor. You need at least two out of the three to be top players. Now, you compare that to PSG, and I just feel like they had more weapons in their front line because Kvaratskhelia is like a top player. So I would put him, say, same level as a Salah, right? But then Dembele, even though he's not a good finisher, he's just a much more overall dynamic threat than anything that you guys have. And then you add in, so Barcola was terrible in both legs, but then they're able to bring on someone like Due off the bench. And Due was, again, I'd say he's more of a threat on the ball than either Jota or Diaz. And probably, obviously, Gakpo because he's injured as well. So PSG almost had three out of their four players that are as good, if not better, than what Liverpool have. So there's a mismatch there. And I think this is a big problem for Liverpool that would have continued to hurt you guys, even if you progress into the competition, because you look at Real Madrid, and I know you dealt with them in the group stage, but then again, their front three, they've got three top players. You add
Mm.
Jude Bellingham in, that's four. You've only got Salah. You go to Barcelona, they've got Rafinha and they've got Yamal. So it's like every single team you would have come up against would have had at least three or four good attackers, whereas you just really have one good attacker. So I think
Mm.
Liverpool, if anything, praise needs to go to Slot to get this team as far as it did. And again, it showcases how bad the Premier League is at the moment. The fact that this team is running away with the title because it's a solid Liverpool team, but that front line is, if you were to compare it against the great front lines in Premier League history, it's not going to be up there at all.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about this front line. It's also why I've praised Salah so much, actually, where I've gone, he's playing, and I mean this respectfully to the other combinations, but Salah is carrying this forward line
100%.
because he does everything. Like I was at the Newcastle game when he played the Pasta Diaz with the outside of his foot, and I've seen that so many times this season where he does something magical, but one of the other forward players just can't contribute and do anything with it. And I do think, as much as I think this Liverpool team have been really good this season, when we came up against PSG, when I saw the draw, I said Liverpool don't go through here, because I felt as though we just said that midfield three, probably dynamism wise, probably similar, but technical quality wise, PSG are slightly better. And I think this PSG team is better balanced than any PSG team I've seen in my probably 25 years of watching football. And now they've got forwards who can just win games on their own. Two-footed forwards, by the way, all of them are two-footed, which is also a problem. Um, Anything else? Have I missed anything?
Yeah, I just think from a PSG defensive perspective, we haven't really spoken about Pacho. I
Mm.
think Pacho, really good performances over the two legs, made it really hard for Liverpool's centre forwards. They never really got any sniff out of him. Anytime that Liverpool tried to go long, and the reason why it's important to look at how your team defends against long balls, particularly against Liverpool, is because of the Trent Alexander-Arnold factor. That curved ball going in behind, sometimes, Allison kicking it out of hand quickly and playing balls over the top. These weapons Liverpool use can really catch teams out, particularly in the big games when two big teams are going toe to toe with the press. But Pacho would the ball would come over the top and he would eat that up, and he really brought some composure to the PSG backline, because PSG are not really renowned for dealing with physicality
Mm.
well, and yet he brought that spinal factor. And I think this is a very Luis Enrique influence, where he loves to kind of have quite complete footballing teams. He's not your traditional Spaniard who just wants tiki taka. He's more of a warrior type as well. And I think him bringing in that type of player really solidified PSG in those little dual moments which can change games.
Yeah, I think previously we've said they're soft-centered, and even now, I think we said this before we started recording. I think Marquinhos coming off was probably a blessing, because he has a moment in him. The moment the game becomes tense, he was okay today. We didn't have that much to do because Pacho was there. But I think if it's a cross coming in the 118th minute is Marquinhos against Darwin, I'm putting my money on Marquinhos doing something daft, because he has done year after year. Um, I do also think this PSG team is really well equipped to go up against anyone, and that's where I think it. And also in the French league, they can rest players like they did this weekend. But I do think my one caveat to that is, if Trent stayed on, I think Liverpool win the game, because I think Trent went into a zone where he became unstoppable.
Yeah, I think Trent had a really interesting game where first 20 to 30 minutes, like he was doing almost on the verge of brilliant stuff, but it wasn't quite coming off. But you could feel the energy in his
Mm.
performance. You could feel like he's getting into these pockets of space, and he's hurting PSG in terms of where he's picking the ball up. And it just felt like he would go on from strength to strength, and it felt like he had a decisive moment in him. So that injury really, I think, took the wind out of Liverpool's sails a little bit. Kwanzaa came on, did quite well considering, but it just wasn't what quite Trent was offering. And then I think the injury to Kanate really hurt you guys, because I was looking at Liverpool and thinking maybe they're conserving a bit of energy first half of extra time, second half they'll come on strong. But once he went off, that just forced you guys to stay on the back foot. Finally, I think in terms of the subs, taking off McAllister, taking off Shabo, you're losing all your ball strikers and you're going into a penalty shootout.
Mm.
And it just felt like Slot hadn't really thought things through from a penalty perspective. You've got to look at, for example, someone like Allison is not a great penalty shot stopper. Donnarumma is. So you needed all your ball striking weapons on that pitch at the same time. And I felt like you took them all off. And then the order of the penalty takers just wasn't right.
Yeah, and I think another contributing factor to this is I don't want to kill Slox. I think, as you said earlier, he's done unbelievable, but I would have rotated more against Southampton. I think even if Liverpool drew the game against Southampton, the title was still done. Like, Arsenal will not catch them. But you saw Gravenberch was tired. McAllister had to come off because he was obviously booked. So Boschlei came off because he was tired. And I don't know, like I don't play at the elite level, but having 2 90 minutes rest between these two guys probably would have got them through extra time. You bring on Harvey and you bring on Curtis, I think the tempo just changes and completely different sort of profiles. But anyway, I think that's everything. One quick question: how far do you think PSG will go?
Depends who they face, really.
Probably Villa, then Madrid.
I think they can beat Villa, obviously. Madrid,
Oh, what a double tie that's
That'd
going to
be an
be.
outstanding tie, to be fair. I mean, I think I've said from the start of the season, Madrid and Barca are two of my favorites, and then I had PSG and Bayern as my other two,
Okay.
but I had them like the slight tier below it. I think Inter are dark horses, but I can't see them going all the way. So I think Inter have it in them to put one big side away, but I don't think they'll put two big sides away. So them against Bayern, very interesting. Atletico, similarly, I see them as a side that can put like one big team away, but I can't see them going all the way. But Barca, for me, are like, if they can turn it on in a big game against anyone, they can destroy anyone on their day. So they'll probably be my favorites. But PSG and Real Madrid are pretty close.
All right. Well, I think PSG will beat Madrid. I've got a weird feeling PSG are going to the final. I don't know why. Maybe because I've just experienced playing against them, but I think they're
Yeah.
so well balanced. Madrid have injuries, but anyway, it will be fascinating. There'll be more insight episodes coming. I don't know about the Premier League anymore because the league feels like it's done, but we will consider. We're both busy guys, but if you enjoy this episode, make sure you drop a like, follow, and also follow my new podcast, which is a cricket podcast. If you're a cricket fan, it features Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid. It's called Beard Before Wicket. For now, we'll see you in the next one.